Our folks, the official start into a hybrid meeting start, recording in progress. I hope all our Zoomers can hear me. Can we get a thumbs up from some of the Zoomers that my projection at least works? I can't see them calling, Brendan, you guys gotta tell me.
No thumbs up.
No thumbs up, so we need to unmute this one. Let me get in here. Oh boy. Now we're gonna have an echo.
Oh, you're getting some nods.
Well, now they can hear me, but we have an echo here. What's that? I just needed this. I know. Let's try this again. Zoomers, if you can hear me, please nod or give a thumbs up.
Yep, we're good.
Oh, there you go. The minute you turn it on, but the noise. Everybody needs a little reset in their lives, don't they? All right, yay, we're making this hybrid world continue to work. Welcome to everyone who is in person today, who is able to join us out at the Kalamazoo Nature Center, and welcome to all of our Zoomers online. Hopefully we can. So this is our very first Community Voices Series and our MiCAN members meeting of 2023. It's wonderful to be in person and streaming with all of you, especially from my home base. So I feel like this is a great opportunity for me to give a huge shout out to the groups that I came up in the climate movement with, as well as share with the rest of the Michigan Climate Action Network the cool things that we've been doing here together for so many years. So coming out of my home base, it's very cool to be able to give you all this opportunity. Because we're at the Kalamazoo Nature Center, I'm going to take just a moment to read the land acknowledgement for where we are in person. The Kalamazoo Nature Center holds responsibility for over 1,500 acres of land. These properties embody a history of deep historical injustices that have produced inequity and access to nature that continues today. KNC occupies the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the First Peoples, the Anishinaabe, also known as the Council of the Three Fires, the Odaadwe, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi people, ceded land in the 1821 Treaty of Chicago and lost land through forced removal in 1833. Additionally, we acknowledge the complex racial inequity contributing to steep disparities of land across and ownership for Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. This gives weight to KNC's charge to our community. We are committed to becoming a KNC led by and in service to all of our community and to honoring our complex history in all we do. I'm really proud of the Kalamazoo Nature Center and that statement. Thanks for hosting us here today. And thanks to the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition, the Climate Change Working Group, and West Michigan Environmental Action Council for all being here today to talk through some pieces. I've got just a little bit of an intro to ground us in what we're doing today and some of the things that MiCAN is up to. Don't worry, groups, I will keep this pretty short so that you all get your kind of thing as well. Just a quick little community norms. You know, we're in this together, folks, and a lot of folks are going to be talking about their groups, what they've been doing. Everyone's strategies and tactics might be different, but we all are here to achieve the same goals. And so I just wanted to remind us of some community norms that the Michigan Climate Action Network uses to do that. Things like talking from our own direct experience and using those I statements, listening to understand, not to just respond, and letting other folks have their space, such as these neighbors. You might have noticed some other people besides Denise Keel running around making this room work and on the screens here today. So I want them to just take a quick moment and introduce themselves. You want to go ahead, Trina?
I'll try to keep it pretty brief, but my name is Serena Amber and I am the social media specialist here at MiCAN. I joined the team back in May of last year. So as of right now, I am our most senior member by 2 weeks. Yes, I'm a very new team. And Colleen Ati is not by the podium, but
hey everybody, my name is Colleen Adi, as Serena introduced me. I am our communications specialist here at MiCAN. Also just joined in the fall, so it was a pretty special time because I got to see our strategic planning process end to end, which was fun with Denise and Serena, of course. Yeah, originally from Traverse City, Michigan. I'm a Spartan and just really glad to be here in the Michigan movement. open employment.
Hi, I'm Brendan. I'm currently interning at MiCAN. And I'm a student here, or I'm a student at Western Michigan University, originally from Saginaw, Michigan, came here, and I'm glad to be interning.
It's fun when your life comes full circle and you used to be the professor who managed internships and now you run an organization that gets those internships in political science. Thanks, everybody. I'd like to make sure our Zoomers have a chance to introduce themselves. Maybe they could put in the chat who you are, if you're with the affiliated organization, and where you are geographically. And we've got Colleen and Brendan back there minding our Zoom chat and watching those things. Yeah. Oh, you were just short here. Wonderful. And maybe just a shout out. I know kind of been working through Kalamazoo and Crisis Coalition and WMEAC are here, but also Western Student Association is represented. Kalamazoo Nature Center, CCL, Citizens Climate Lobby is here. Other organizations in the house, we should know about what's going on back there.
Well, we're in our infancy, but we're the Van Buren Climate Action Team.
Welcome. Yes, go ahead.
Kalamazoo County Planning Department, we just approved this week. Climate Sustainability Coordinator that is posted right now for the position, so just wanted to let you all know that.
Yeah. Who we got in the chat there? What's going on?
Got some representation from the Citizens Climate Lobby at the City. We are Nate from the Grand Rapids Climate Coalition. Janet from the Grand Rapids Climate Coalition. Nursing faculty at WMU. KCCC and CRA. More management working group and KCCC, fancy, and then groundwork center for like communities and travelers.
Yay!
And then more KCCC, Citizens Climate Lobby, KCCC, Kalamazoo. Yeah. We'll get to that actually.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you all for being here. We'll have a little, again, I'm just going to go over a few more minutes to get an overview of where we're at with the Climate Action Network. And then we'll hear from our three groups. And then we'll kind of turn things over to a little bit more networking and being able to engage and welcome all those folks. Well, also, if you are in person, sorry, it's the worst. If you're in person, Jessica Simons, Conservation VP here at the Combination Center. It's a nice day, nice enough day here in Michigan anyways, that we're going to take a little walk, a little social hike after this to look at some of the climate forestation and sugar bush area that they've been redeveloping. So just a quick reminder of what MiCAN is all about, what we're trying to do. Of course, many of you have been following along our strategic planning process. This last fall, this really kind of just updated our mission, but continue to want to amplify, connect, and support all of you doing this work. That's why we're hosting these kinds of series and this kind of meeting today. That's our first goal, is to really shout out and be that megaphone for all of your actions. We hope to hear a lot of that today, so we know what we need to be telling other people in the network about what you're doing. We're also here to connect and support, right? Which is what we're also kind of doing here today. I really feel very strongly that it's difficult for us to take action if we don't already understand each other, know a little bit of each other, and have built some relationship and trust. So a lot of what we're doing this year is about making sure that that groundwork is laid so that when we have a call to action, and there's going to be many, right? That we are ready to go, and then you're going to be able to say, yes, that's what the Climate Crisis Coalition needs, and we know them now, and we can take that action. Because our ultimate goal at the top of that circle is to make sure that we not only meet the current My Healthy Climate Plan, we think we can exceed those targets if all of us truly do collective action together. So all of our work right now is focused on learning the local communities about what you're doing, what those challenges and successes are, how we can build those into a larger campaign alignment and incorporate that into the My Healthy Climate Plan, right? So that we can give that feedback. We're one of the only groups that focuses on the local communities and how they feed into the state system. So that's kind of what we're trying to do here. I'll give you just a couple of examples of our actions. Our communication is our #1 strategy, right? Again, we're here to amplify and shout out and be that megaphone. And so we participate in national campaigns, the Climate Action Campaign. You probably got a lot of emails from us about methane and soot, which closes in like 1 week. I know that WMEAC is going to be talking about that one. One of the other big issues that MiCAN works on is shutting down Line 5. Is there?
Yeah, the Zoomers are having a little trouble here with us.
Okay, because Zoomers are having trouble. Can we turn that all up or should I come closer to it? If they're having trouble hearing me, you know the question. Do I just need to speak up? Is there a way to turn the volume up? Now you can
It
hear
sounds
me?
like- Yeah, they say if you're closer, they can hear you.
All right, so note, this is the test for all the other speakers today. This is the Denise range, so I don't know, well, you might have to stand over there. We could move that,
We can move the entire table closer.
and that would be loud. We might be able to move it a little bit closer once I can get on of here. Also online. Intervener in the contested cases before the Michigan. Line 5, we think the best action that we can take right now on those lines is to actually to shut that down. Now is that feedback?
No.
Okay. Okay. What's another? Oh, you're right. Yeah. We're gonna figure it out, folks. There we go. Yeah, we're sorry, you can stay muted for just a little bit. But these are the kind of actions that we've taken. I want to make sure though that you guys talk about Michigan Climate Communications Network.
Well, Colleen, you're right next to the.
I know. I thought we should just say- I'm too soft spoken, right? But yeah, so our overarching goal, I think, at MiCAN is to really be the cutting edge communications hub as a statewide network. We want to make sure that we're raising the voice. You guys are already doing a lot of good work in your communities. And so, I mean, we're a small shop ourselves, but we realize that a lot of the people doing the climate work all throughout Michigan, locally, getting your hands dirty on the ground in your communities, oftentimes are volunteers or they don't have communications staff. So a big thing for us is adding capacity, sharing expertise. And one way that we've done that is with the MCCN, Michigan Climate Communications Network. We established that in January of this year and invited on folks from all communications folks from places like Sierra Club, Michigan Environmental Council, environmental nonprofits and organizations all throughout Michigan. So that's a way that we've been able to make sure that we're in the know with what everybody's doing in other areas of the state. And then, Serena, do you want to add anything? Denise, am I missing? We have a couple actions up there. The one on soot, if you take a picture of that QR code, that closes on Tuesday, actually. So there's a proposal to limit soot pollution that's on the federal level, but we at MiCAN are supporting that and trying to get folks from Michigan to sign up and rally around that. So if you're interested, go ahead and use the QR code on the screen.
You can see that we got the team started on QR codes throughout today's presentation, so I hope that will make it easier. You know, you can just hold your phone right up to the screen if you're in the room, and the same thing if you are in the Zoomers. So our next big project is education. You know, the other piece that we're really getting into, the strategic plan has 6 different pillars. About half of them, 3 of them are about our operating, our staff and budget models and those kinds of pieces. The other 3 are really our action pieces. So communication is the #1 strategy that we pursue. And then we're doing what we're doing here today with grassroots and grass tops. One of the things that we're working on with our intern from Western Michigan University is higher education. Brendan, you want to tell us a little bit about your project?
Yeah, so far at MiCAN, I've been working on the higher education climate action report. I've been looking through climate policies and climate efforts at different universities across the state. So far, looking at all the public universities, all 3 U of M campuses, making efforts to talk to their directors of sustainability, which we have Westerns here today. We're making efforts to get in touch with students, making efforts to see how the students get to school, whether it's a commuter school, just checking out stuff like that and then writing it up, comparing different schools and building the network.
We're grateful to have Brendan's work. The other piece that we're really working on with this is the idea, and I know a lot of folks are educators in the room, is there are other models out there for requirements for education in our K-12 and our universities, And we'd really like to work on adopting some state policies that could be around those ideas. There's a lot of groups working on that. There's also some groups from our outdoor educators. And since we're at the Kalamazoo Nature Center, I want to make sure that we include all formal and informal educators when we think about what has to happen with climate education, right? These are our interpreters who work at our nature centers, Michigan Alliance for Environmental Outdoor Education, and MiCAN have really teamed up to try to spearhead a hopeful statewide policy effort along those lines. So why are we here today? Again, this is the launch of our Community Voices series. Really, again, the whole point here is that we hear from local communities about what you are doing, what your successes and challenges are, what kinds of actions that we are trying to take. And it is, again, our goal to compile all those and help provide the technical and other resources that you might need, right, along with the network, and to also culminate all of those learnings into the micro and move these pieces along. I know it's kind of like, okay, it's also a members meeting today. It's like, what are we doing? Are we doing both of these? Yes, you're doing both of them today. And so what makes a members meeting different than Community Voices series? That extra half hour, we gotta listen to me about what MiCAN's doing. And again, we'll do that. So we'll continue with Community Voices series once a month, almost always virtual there. We'll do these meetings hybrid style quarterly. So you are at the first one in March, and we'll just get a little bit extra information about what MiCAN is doing and ways to get involved at some of those meetings. Our next members meeting will be another QR code coming your way. Everybody get ready for the Michigan Climate Summit. We are hosted by Oakland University over on the east side of the state this year. That'll be June 2nd. Again, all of the kind of advocates, educators, many state legislators will be there in order to culminate our campaign goals, what we need in our local communities, what we need from the state level, and where those gaps and mismatches. I hope that you all have that on your calendar. Registration is open, sponsorship is open. I'm still putting together panels, all those educators, that piece that I just talked about. I'll probably be making an ask to some of you to do that soon. So our goals today, I think I probably already kind of stated them, but one of the big things that we need to always work on is a more inclusive network. You know, sadly, right, our organization is still mostly white. Most of the people in this room are mostly white. We have a lot of work to do along those angles and building a much more diverse network and building that from the ground up. We recognize that and we're working very hard to help change that. The other thing, of course, is we want to get the statewide capacity going. Again, we're here today to make sure we know each other so that when next time I call you, you're like, oh yeah, you need to do that together. Right? We already know, we trust each other, we understand all that. And again, our ultimate goal is to influence the speed and rapid, right? Implementation of my healthy climate plan. I don't know if you all read the IPCC report that just came out this last week. I mean, the environmental reports folks every 5 to 7 years. That is likely the last roadmap that we will get before we start to see these serious impacts of 2030. This is kind of it for our moment. It's why I'm doing what I'm doing full time. So today we're going to hear from Climate Change Working Group, from our colleagues in the Climate Crisis Coalition, and from West Michigan Environmental Action Council. And then we'll just do a little kind of recap of that. Once everybody gives their presentation, we'll have some time for discussion. So be listening or share the things about successes and challenges, and we'll have a little discussion when everybody gets done about what those shared items might be, how they might align with some of the other state goals. And then again, for all the folks who are here in person, we might get to go outside and have a wonderful talk and walk that Jessica's on. All right, I think that's it. So who is up for the Western Michigan University Climate Change Working Group? And maybe I'm going to stand over here next to the owl, but the owl is also it's gonna be able to see you too. It's right in there.
Hi, I'm Paul Clements,
Alan Webb.
and we're going to be speaking on behalf of the Western Michigan University Climate Change Working Group, which is kind of odd because a number of our members are here in the audience and also on our Zoom call. But there we are. But there may be a few people here who don't really know about us, so we will actually start from the beginning and see where we get. We were founded in 2012. Ron Kramer, a sociologist, Dave Groh, a biologist, and I, a social scientist at Western, were just giving presentations around the community, around the state, around the world about climate change issues. And I like Ron Kramer's way of coming at this. He says, you know, I was looking at climate change. He's been an activist in social justice issues all his life. But he never really thought climate change was such a big deal. And then he just started looking into it and he had his oh shit moment. And that oh shit moment is when, you know, rather than just like, oh, this is another environmental issue, you see, this is actually like the biggest issue facing humanity. And this is an existential threat to the way of life of all the people around the world. And then we looked around Western Michigan University, our university, and there was a sustainability, there was a sustainability office, and there was a climate action plan, but it wasn't much. And in terms of the role of the university in addressing the existential crisis of climate change, we knew that much more had to be done. And so we launched in 2012 the Climate Change Working Group. And Alan was one of our original members, and within about a year, I think Denise took over as chair. And then that really also gave us an incredible energy for moving forward. But I think that we have pretty clearly been, and Jeff has been with us from day one, been the strongest group of faculty, administrators, and students usually kind of coming in and out. And members of the community, very, very, very strong members for the last 13 years. And our mission is to foster research, education, and outreach to mitigate and adapt to global climate change. And so in terms of the education side, we've developed a climate change studies minor with many, many students coming through over the years. 2 years ago, we started a graduate certificate in climate change policy and management, which I chair. So if you know anyone who would like to do like 6 classes that can give them real professional competence in addressing issues of climate change policy and management, I teach a class on managing challenges from climate change that looks at the global perspective and the Michigan perspective in terms of, you know, what the issues are and what needs to be done. Then we've had many research grants for students. So students can pursue research on any topic related to climate change. I think maybe you may have gotten 1 or 2 of those, Deirdre. Yeah. And you know, so the hope is that as with Deirdre, that this research then will help to launch our students into careers that engage with climate change issues. We have many of our members have had a lot of our own personal academic publications in the climate change area, like my friend Alan, who has a book for teachers for English teachers, is that right? About how to include climate change education in teaching English, which has been like published and gone out to hundreds, tens of thousands of teachers and presented in like major magazines, education magazines. I don't know all the details, but it's great.
It's been doing fine.
It's been doing fine. Ron Kramer and myself have done many publications on different, basically, I'll say climate justice issues and on, in terms of the global agenda and the national agenda, what needs to happen and what kind of organization might be necessary. And not just that, but what forces we're up against. Because let me tell you, the oil companies figured this out 30 years ago. And they know how to play these games, and they've been promoting their polluting agenda, their profit agenda for all this time. And I'm going to tell you that the climate justice movement is playing catch up still against the oil interests. And so how to organize effectively against them, and it can't just be domestic from my perspective, also, but I'll say for anybody's perspective, this is the global issue. And certainly we have to focus here where we are, but if we don't win it at the global level, it gets lost with the other countries around the world. Many of us, we've given, I'm going to say, probably thousands of presentations at Western and Kalamazoo, around Michigan, around the United States, around the world, among our various members and all these different aspects. We've invited a whole slew of speakers to Western on climate change issues. I'll highlight Mary Robinson, former president of Ireland, who was the UN climate ambassador for many years, just a wonderful speaker. Bill McKibben, I think he's America's leading climate change activist. He brought in a crowd of almost 1,000. Then he came back and zoomed in for a recent thing. But many other speakers. I wanted to talk about our book club. We've had many authors of important fiction and nonfiction works come and speak. We have a faculty climate change fellows program. I think that Elise is with us on Zoom. We have, we've had various efforts to support faculty who may know something about climate change and want to build it into their curriculum. So we've given them grants, and then we've had ourselves, we've served as, you could say, mentors to faculty that how to include climate change within their curriculum. And then there's now a new effort that is externally funded with a bigger effort to basically support faculty in how to include climate change issues in whatever subject is their area of expertise. And then for outreach, I'm going to turn it over to Alan.
Sure.
Could you,
Paul mentioned.
could you step forward just a little bit and see if we can't get a better picture for our Zoomers?
Okay, awesome. I'm talking to that thing.
You are speaking and talking, and hopefully it's camera kind of messed up. Sorry, Zoomers. So we've got a second camera on you here on this phone too. So I'm gonna stand right here.
All right.
Can they see me when I stay like this? Yes,
I
no,
think it might be turned to this way right now.
now it's turned that way.
Yeah, so like,
Huh,
yeah, which is odd.
yeah. Okay, sorry, we'll try. We'll get our Zoomers here.
It's cool. It's
We're trying.
basic. So it has almost like a face on it, by the way. It's got 2 eyes and a nose, but you know, I mean, the AI, I don't know what's alive, what's not alive. All right, so I'm going to try to be swift. This climate working group over the last 10 years has done a lot of different things. And I will also make a tiny little point about the book group that Paul mentioned. We meet once a month online, last Tuesday of the month at 5:30. And I would love if any of you join that group. You can get on the email list and then come in when you would like. So if you want to do that, my email address is allen.webb@wmich.edu. So send me an email and I'll put you on the email list and hear about what we're doing in the book group. We had Amitabh Ghosh came to one of our book group meetings. Mark Linus, who's written the book 6 Degrees, and our final warning came to another one. We've had a very interesting conversations. Okay, my wind's out. I'm going to give some of our sort of public involvement in a little bit of a historical way. We've done a lot of different things. We worked closely with the city of Kalamazoo to develop a climate action plan for Kalamazoo. We got involved in the global climate strike in 2019. We organized a lot of demonstrations on our campus and a big march through to the centers of the city. We sponsored for 3 or 4 years a big Earth Day celebration downtown Kalamazoo that the Nature Center was a partner in. And one of the pieces of that, for example, was we created what we call Walk into the Climate Future, based on Mark Linus's book 6 Degrees, actually, a 4-foot-high, 150-foot long banner that went down the triangular walkways in Bronson Park about climate emergency and walking into the future where we're going if we don't address sufficiently mitigate greenhouse gases. We hope to launch the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition, which is a group of 40+ organizations in the Kalamazoo area, including nonprofits and churches.
And they're up next.
And they're up next. They'll tell you all about themselves. And we feel deeply connected to that. Okay, we feel closely tied with that. And they're co-sponsors of the book group too. So the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition and the working group at the university sponsored this book group. A part of that has been also creating a series called Fridays for the Future, which involved meetings on Fridays, lectures and talks and sharing ideas and information, and with both a face-to-face and a Zoom dimension. Created a course at the university, introductory course in climate change that's invited a whole series of different scholars around the campus to come and speak to students, and they've gotten involved with the Fridays for the Future activities as well. Book club's been talked about. Let's see, an action plan for Kalamazoo. We had got Kalamazoo to create a climate emergency declaration. We hope foster the city hiring a sustainability person. we're working hard to try to see if we can get the county to hire a sustainability person and a climate change person. We we've been coordinators for solar gardening projects on a contaminated Superfund site in Kalamazoo, are you up next? It's one of my.
Make sure you go to climate emergency month, think about me.
Okay, so climate emergency month, which we're in right now, we decided this year would be an initiative, a kind of experimental initiative to see what we could do during the month of March and how we could bring in the university and the local community to think about climate emergency and find ways to address issues of justice and sustainability at the same time. So we put together, I think, a tremendous range of speakers and from yoga practice and vegan diet, ideas to I talk about is ignoring climate change, mass murder, to Will McKibben spoke and Rashida Tlaib also spoke on Zoom to meet with students and so forth. We brought a woman named Gaia Vince, who wrote a very powerful book about climate migrants called Migrant Earth, where we're going in the next next few decades, and how we're gonna have to move a lot of us much farther north. And she came from Great Britain. We collaborated with Grand Rapids to make that happen. Had a great talk last night about the nexus between the climate crisis and the nuclear war. And that was very interesting. So just a whole series of very important, interesting conversations and activities. One of the best ones actually was we brought Missy Stoltz from Ann Arbor, who's really the leader in Ann Arbor of making Ann Arbor one of the most climate focused and organized cities in the country. And she had tons of ideas for us. That was really great. Okay, so that's a little bit of the climate emergency one. Do I ask a question? No, you're up. So we've been practicing this for hours.
We've done a pretty good job in terms of research, education, and outreach, but we're also very much aware that Western Michigan University as an institution is not a leader on climate change. And that's wrong. It should be a leader. We have been active over time in helping Western's climate action plan and helping engage with students, Brandon and his predecessors also, to pressure the administration. And then the students have said, look, Western says they want to be climate carbon neutral by 2050 along with the state, but 2050, as we all know, is not nearly soon enough. And the students are saying 2030, and that's exactly right. But the university has not responded to that. Jeff is here somewhere, Jeff, with the Office for Sustainability, and we do have the student sustainability fee. So that's great for action, but the university needs to take a much stronger role. The last thing I'll say about this is that the university has finally, after Denise pushed for years and years and years to get actual resources, all of the work that I've described is volunteer work that we do just as professors or administrators or whatever, in addition to our regular jobs, right? So we've had virtually hardly any support from the university for any of this besides just our paychecks. And so, but finally, starting this coming academic year, we'll have a university-funded faculty fellow for climate change solutions with one course buyout per semester and a year-round graduate assistant starting from this year. And that's the first big thing we're getting from the university. But the university needs to do much more to become a leader in addressing the climate crisis.
Okay, so I think we were charged with coming up with some questions we'd like help on.
Well, any actions or anything like that, and kind of about a minute, so.
Yeah, do separate time.
And so we'll do separate time. So I will just.
We can see actions and share up.
Yeah, mention these questions because I think there's some things that all of us are thinking about. And I'm not asking for an answer to them right now.
Okay.
It could be something that sort of put it in the air in a way. Does that make sense?
Sure.
The one thing we didn't talk about with faith institutions, but I'll talk about the next year probably. So here's 3 questions that I'm going to ask. They're really kind of the same question in different forms. The first one is the pandemic took away energy from activism, which maybe is starting to come back, though perhaps differently. what might we do or focus on to promote activism now in 2023? I think it's something we're all thinking about, isn't it? Again, perhaps the pandemic plays a part, but university students seem especially overwhelmed these days. Working, mental health issues, stress over their future. It is hard to foster their involvement in anything beyond narrow classroom work. What kind of things can we do with that? While we see the climate crisis as relevant to so many disciplines and studies at the university, I mean, we can't take them all where it isn't relevant. Yet so many of our professor colleagues seem to be carrying on with business as usual and can't seem to imagine how they might address the crisis in their own teaching or research. That's another thing that we're thinking about. So it really also, I think another piece is how do we involve ourselves more deeply with student activism?
Absolutely.
So thank you very much.
Thanks. Folks, thank you for that. If you got questions in the Zoom, you can put those in the chat. We'll have a little bit of time after each one, or you can discuss the crisis coalition up next. And Zoomers, just a little note, the Alpha Camera does not seem to be working great, and so thank you for your interns save the day again. Brendan is now holding a phone so that you can also see the speakers, and we've pinned that to the spotlight now. So you can probably change your own views if you're watching us from your home. But hopefully you can all see and hear us now. So that's still picking up your sound, and that's your camera. So good luck.
Yep, we're good. It's up to them.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you, MiCAN. Thank you, MiCAN. Staff and my friends, folks that are new to this work. Welcome. It's important work. It's hard, and we're here to help us any way we can. I'm going to sort of iterate a little bit on what I've already heard, and some of that was touched on in what I'll show in the slides. But I want to point out, if you're from the county or Dan German, many of our recent sessions on all of this work have been recorded. They're online. We can show you where they are. So when you go back, your employees and your companies, and you get in arguments about what's real or not real, what people believe or don't believe, who's convinced by the evidence, who doesn't trust any evidence anywhere. But you can find resources that we've already put out there for the community to share, to educate, to welcome people into this work, to help them through the difficult parts. Keep that in mind. The working group has reporting, the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition has reporting. And they're good resources for all of you as you step forward in this work. So I'm Jeff. I direct the Office for Sustainability at Western. It is a very interesting place, and it exists because student leaders stepped forward and they put money on the table and said we need to take action on campus. We're going to do advocacy, and we're going to educate. We're going to collaborate. We're going to do small to medium scale action research projects on campus. So we are pushing for non-motorized transportation, for different kinds of local food systems, for creating zero waste, right? Food waste can be composted, that can turn into soil. Those are the kinds of action research projects we're doing, while also challenging the administration to step up and lead, just like Dr. Clemens suggested for the public presentation. We call the climate change issue a crisis. One of the reasons I'm a part of and the board member of the coalition is we call it a crisis. It is an emergency. We are in an emergency. 20 years ago, when I started working in Kalamazoo on a watershed council and in environmental consulting, I often was the person in the room who raised my hand and said, no one's talking about climate change. And it was crickets. I would get ghosted afterwards. Nobody wanted to talk about it. It's not my job. Stay in your lane. Can't deal with that. You're too young. What are you worried about? I'll be dead by the time the real stuff happens. I mean, talk about disappointing part. And 20 years later, right? We have a community and we are building momentum, and we are getting somewhere. It feels good finally, even though I'm still nervous about the future, like all of you. Next slide, please. We were born out of a big action. Students around the world came out into the streets, global climate crisis. We built all of the collaborations from the working group over many years, the work of sustainability, the work of community collaborators. We hit the street, and we are down at our Arcadia Festival site. And that was sort of the birth of the idea of the crisis coalition. Next slide, please. And I'm kind of adapting to use where I stand, where I look, and what my slides are. So we have a mission, it's worth reading. The Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition mobilizes collective action. Collective action. We can work with individuals, but we have to work collaboratively to make real impact globally, not just local policy, all the way up to global policy. We need to be loud, right? To achieve immediate and drastic reductions in greenhouse gas emissions and rapid adoption of renewable energy through a transition grounded in social, racial, economic, and environmental justice. Many people call that climate change justice or climate justice these days, and that's the theme of Climate Emergency Month, which was just mentioned. And if you look around the community, you'll see the bright yellow-ish triangle on posters, on the web, across your social media. If you see it, here's what you can do right now, or right in this meeting over today. You can share this on your social media platform, in your bubble, your news bubble, your social bubble. You can push this along. You can share it with anybody. You can share it with your frenemies and your enemies, and you can encourage them to get involved in climate action now, locally in this community. We have principles of affiliation. I'll read the golden words only. Collective efforts, right? Educate. We were born out of an educational institution in a nearby community. Most of us are educators at our core. We influence, right? And we want to sustain high levels of citizen mobilization ultimately. Next slide, please. These are many of our affiliates. The slide's a little old. We have more than 40, actually, not more than 30, and still growing. Next slide, please. Guiding principles in brief. Those of you who are on Zoom can kind of go back and watch the recording later. Those of you who are present today can go back and probably watch the Zoom recording as well. So you can study these if you like, but in brief, we welcome viewpoint diversity. We recognize climate as a commons on which all life depends. All life, those of you who care about biodiversity and the biodiversity crisis and this 7-ish great extinction we are likely in now, can tie that concern to your concerns about climate emergency, because we all have to be a part of the movements together, in my opinion. We honor and own our pain for the world. I think this is another unique element, right? You hear it in speakers' voices, right? They're wavering, like I feel it right now. We feel that pain because it's real. I mean, it's hard to think about generations later and decades later from where we're sitting right now. Many of our grandkids will be here. Maybe they're here now or they're coming, right? And they're going to be dealing with what has been set up for them. It's not their fault, but it's all of our responsibility to take action on it. We inspire positive action, nonetheless. We celebrate. It's important to celebrate when you win something, when you take a step forward together. We're going to celebrate that together with you. We adhere to scientific integrity, and we're nonpartisan, but we're not apolitical, right? It's a huge issue. It crosses over everything. Our elected officials are temporary, right? Our future's forever. Next slide, please. You can read about our affiliation principles in this talk later or on next slide. It's important to point out a bit about climate justice. Very few humans have had a massive influence ultimately on the climate problem we have now. Very few. And many of us have a lifestyle and have choices that we're coming to sort of realize they're waking up to might be pretty high carbon intensity. And there are a lot more humans around the world that have very low impact that has gotten us to where we are today. And we have to grapple with that. I think all of us, and those of us in our social circles, this is an educational moment for you. You can check out data later. Next slide. There have been state and local actions that have been growing, right? If we're missing federal action until very recently, we can celebrate that there have been a lot of state and local actions, even if some people call them performative. I think that that's correct, right? These things matter. You have local officials taking action and making a statement that the climate change issue is real, that it's a crisis and that it's urgent. And they pass things like declarations or proclamations. That's the first step toward action, in my opinion. Next slide, please. Some of our wins to celebrate as a crisis coalition include climate emergency declarations in multiple governmental jurisdictions locally. And just recently, the city of Kalamazoo passed the Climate Emergency Month proclamation Because we are in the climate emergency month right now, and the city is aware, and they are supportive, and they are one of the group sponsors. Next slide, please. These images are a little older, but they demonstrate some of the early work in the coalition. Educational in nature, often talks and discussions, sometimes community events, book reads, challenging you to eat differently and think differently, or to step outside of your comfort zone and talk about climate change. Next slide, please. Or to vote differently, to really think through the people you're voting for and how important it is that our elected officials pay attention to this and acknowledge the reality. And think about crisis and urgency and just how important it is. Next slide, please. Fridays for Future is a series that the coalition put on for a while. It still continues, and every other Friday, sometimes once, sometimes twice a month, we'll gather on Zoom and really dig into a subject. Maybe it's electric vehicles, maybe it's diet, these sorts of things. Next slide, please. We posted climate writing competitions at the university. We read books together and talk about them as Alan mentioned. Next slide, please. Other wins. This city is very close to hiring a full-time sustainability coordinator. That's the first ever type position in the city of Kalamazoo. That's a win. As far as I'm concerned, and this group has long advocated for such a position to implement action plans that they've written, even when those action plans are weak and performative, I guess some people would say. I disagree. Like, you've got to start somewhere and start writing, you iterate those action plans, you make them stronger, you make your goals more aggressive over time, you find the money, you build the collaborations, move forward together. Kalamazoo County now, as we had mentioned, is recruiting a 3-year grant-funded sustainability climate and justice coordinator. That's a win. We collaborated. This coalition worked hard to align those resources to find that outside money to pull it into this community. And why not pull millions or billions more in the next few years coming down from the federal administration? How about electric buses? That seems like an easy win. Just get the right people in the room and make that commitment, right? Let's improve public transportation. Better bike lanes, get it done. I could go on all day on actions. Missy Stoltz talk from Ann Arbor the other day in the library is fantastic. Missy thought of, and her collaborators have imagined and listed and tried many things, and they continue that work, and they're not afraid to fail, right? They are not afraid to say, we tried it, it didn't work, we're changing it, we're going to try something else later. For local government officials, that's so important to encourage your colleagues to take a chance, take a risk, and look around at what other communities have done, and the coalition will back you up. That's an important step for us as a crisis coalition. What can we do? We can back up local officials who stick their neck out a little ways and they're worried about the next voting cycle. That's another great opportunity for us. How are we doing on time, Dr. Steele?
I'll give you a couple more minutes.
Thanks. Many of us already know this data. Most Americans care about this. Just, we don't talk about it. This is something the coalition can do, is help people become comfortable. We can normalize talking about climate change, the emergency, the crisis. Don't be afraid of it, right? Step up, find something to do, find somebody to talk to, help make them comfortable. We can do this, we're doing it now. And our resources can help people with that journey that they're on. Next slide, please. This is the hard one. If you care about it, what makes you act, right? This is like the question of our time. I don't know, there's really no magic answer, but I think the more normal it is that we're acting, the faster we're going to get there. You can review the data later on the recordings. Next slide, please. So join your local climate movement. Join the Crisis Coalition. We are here. We have contact information. Next slide, please. And that's my name. I'm a board member. I want to thank the coalition folks who have stepped up to lead as officers. The coalition is a nonprofit organization recently established. We have kind of laid a groundwork of how to move forward together and how to welcome everyone and be inclusive. Those are hard conversations. We got through them, and now we're ready to take the next steps. We've started to find resources, and we're becoming something a little more than just a group of volunteers. And I think the future is bright for the group. You can find us online. You can find us on social media. Look for the little triangle this month and help us spread that information around the community. Thank you.
Well, I know that I became the face of the climate movement in Kalamazoo, but you can now see all the real people behind all of that action who have been doing this work for so long in this community. Thank you. I'm so proud of you guys and everything you're doing. Oh. Oh, it is. We're gonna get the podium for you, don't worry. We're gonna get you set up for our final speaker. Doers, if you've got questions or comments, we can throw those in the chat, and I do want to remind Rick, she represented St. Joseph in the house, Berrien County, Franklin, Michigan, DNR is here. Let's see, I had a whole bunch of different folks. So the Kalamazoo Grand Rapids is represented, so a nice group today. And so now one thing that I didn't have anything to do with, it's summer being fun, is West Michigan Environmental Council, Judy Courtney.
Well, thank you all for coming and for having me. I want to just recognize that we have already had a landing conference, so it's kind of skip the slides. So just to introduce myself, I'll start by saying Paul really sort of teed up my presentation for today because I am a current PhD student at Western Michigan University, transitioned to a faculty member as a this year. And I'm a student that has benefited from the climate change, different scholarships and grants as a student, as an undergrad, and also as a master's level or graduate level student. And now someone that has taken my education and has applied it to action. So just in line with a lot that has been said today. So today, I'm not here to speak on behalf of Western Michigan University. I am here to speak on behalf of an organization that I support in Grand Rapids, Michigan called WMEAC. So the West Michigan Environmental Action Council, again, short WMEAC. I'm not sure if I said my name, but Deirdre Courtney. So that's who I am. But WMEAC is a nonprofit organization, a 501c3 organization that is uniquely positioned to respond to emerging issues and threats to West Michigan's natural and human ecologies, strategically focused on building sustainable communities and protecting water. Next slide, please. And so just a little bit about the history of West Michigan Environmental Action Council, WMEAC. So there was a time very early on in the mid to late 60s when we weren't thinking about the climate sustainability and climate action in the way we're thinking about it today. But there was organizations, individuals such as Joan Wood, around 1969, who was thinking about issues around local sort of water pollution issues and so forth. And Joan really had the idea that to sort of work with local individuals to, start to organize and think more collectively about how the environment was being impacted, especially as it relates to environmental degradation, water issues, pollution, and so forth. So Joan in 1969, she started WMEAC, again, this nonprofit organization, and with a group of individuals, like-minded individuals who were concerned about environmental issues. And a lot of this work really stemmed from, again, water protection very early on. Some of WMEAC's very early issues or concerns were about water quality, including pesticide use. Joan really coordinated the drafting and passage of the Landmark Environmental Protection Act in 1970. She and the WMEAC group was very instrumental in that work there. And just note what has been accomplished since that time. Michigan's in the Lakes and Streams Act was passed in 1972, which prevents the unauthorized diversion, dredging, and filling of inland lakes and streams. 1991, it was the Adopt a Stream program was debuted as part of WMEAC's work. And then the first mayor's Grand River cleanup kicked off, in 2004. Also, some of our modern day concerns, is really reorienting on climate interaction with environmental justice, continuing outreach, and expanding, our work as it relates to just a little bit more information about the Grand River historically. Again, there was a time when we kind of weren't thinking about things in the way that we're thinking about them today. But just some historical information here, the Grand River has always and continues to be an issue of concern for Grand Rapids as it relates to water quality issues. And so I'm just noting a couple of things here that sort of was the catalyst of some of the work in Grand Rapids. So Grand Rapids and the river sort of in very early 1947, the first dams were sort of constructed and along the Grand River, and it changed sort of like the center of the community and in the way that it sort of brought industry and made changes to the community. And rapids were being drowned and the river was widened to accommodate for more logs, which around that time was starting the beginning of the logging industry. Over the next 100 years or so, the river was a major source of electricity, transport, and waste removal. The Coldwater Creek was one of the first sources of pumped water to use from the Grand River. And it was around this time that it was considered to be considered fit for the use in which it was being used at that time. So some of the early considerations of how the water and the dams were becoming a detriment to the environment. And so much of the water has been diverted or was diverted for industrial use during this time. High flood walls were created and constructed to protect the city from seasonal flooding. So again, just some of these early considerations about the use of industrial power. Okay, and then after we talked about actions. Everyone is speaking about the actions. These are actions that WMEAC is currently involved in. There are some of the major concerns, obviously, is climate resiliency, advocacy, storm water, education, research, and water restoration. And just to highlight some specific actions and programs that WMEAC is currently involved in. So water and climate program as it relates to stormwater, rainfall workshops, rainy day projects, a downstream project, urban agriculture projects, white lake septic projects, as it relates to policy and action. WMEAC is very involved in, again, the mayor's cleanup, that continues today, advocacy and consultation as it relates to water issues, especially around policy, volunteer programs. We're very concerned as an organization around issues of inclusion, environmental justice, and energy justice. And then also, we're very involved in education programs. And here are a few, such as Teach for the Watershed, Zero Waste, composting, and then certain circular economy. So just noting a few programming highlights for some of the actions and involvement that we do that participate in. And then also, we too at WMEAC are very concerned about students and student involvement. So we host internships at WMEAC. And just to name a few, some interns are hired for support around recycling and zero waste work, environmental education. And I think it says here on the screen it's not currently available, but actually we do a lot around environmental education at WMEAC, and we have support with interns, with that work, the policy. And then women in the community environment and environmental advocacy fellowships and internships. Okay, so just to know here, the mission for WMEAC is to work collaboratively alongside a diverse community to advocate, to educate, to engage for environmental issues around the environment and climate justice, and also for a healthy and affordable community for all. So just a little bit of mission there. Oh, next slide, please. And so this here is specifically related to the work that I support with WMEAC. So I support WMEAC with their climate solutions and justice work. WMEAC as an organization values universal access to environmental resources and recognizes special attention and care needed to reach the underprivileged and underrepresented and marginalized groups who are disproportionately impacted by the environment. So just to note that not only are we concerned with the watershed and environmental issues at WMEAC, but we are also concerned with other environmental issues that directly impact communities of color and minority communities and low income. So ongoing environmental issues like the flood water crisis and labor inclusion in Grand Rapids are examples of environmental injustices where marginalized groups are disproportionately impacted, and these are again concerns that we have as an organization that we have. Okay, so just this year, WMEAC has partnered with the Climate Action Campaign, and just a bit of notes here on the Climate Action Campaign. So the Climate Action Campaign is a vibrant coalition of a dozen or so major national environmental justice and public health groups working together to sort of drive ambition for durable federal action based on science to address climate change. And you may have heard about the Solutions for Pollution campaign a little bit earlier today. So you're partnering with the campaign to sort of nudge the Biden administration and also the Environmental Protection Agency to promote or stronger pollution standards or promote stronger pollution standards, for cleaner air for vulnerable communities. So we have some information that we want to share with you today. I have some postcards that I have laid out on the table. But hope that you guys will support the effort by completing one of the postcards today. Again, I think you can go to the next slide. Yeah, I'm gonna stop with that one. Can you go to the next slide, please? Here's another QR code for you guys. The comment period for the Solutions for Pollution campaign will end next Tuesday, March 28th. So we hope that we can submit a public comment today. And I kind of like to leave with the video if it's possible. This is very but we're not going to share it. Yeah, we can share it. Yeah, people can do it later. But yeah, so again, in a nutshell, that is WMEAC and some of its current action, my involvement, and again, the solutions for.
Yay!
Well, she didn't tell you about all the great work that she has already done to get many of our county elected officials to also sign on a grass tops effort for that soup pollution. So well done. The other thing I'll say about the National Climate Action Campaign, we are all anticipating a federal rulemaking process on carbon pollution to come next. And again, why we're doing this, so that we can get to know each other, so we can take those actions. We're told end of April, maybe early May even. The carbon pollution rule from the Biden administration through the Environmental Protection Agency is coming, folks, and we are going to need to be incredibly active in supporting and making that as strong as it can possibly be. The methane, the soup standard that's out right now, it's like the lead up to the big one that's coming, all right? Maybe it's Earth Day, I don't know, that might be a good political move, you think? Right on. So what I want to do now is have a little debrief, because we just heard a lot of information, yes. And I know many of you are familiar with the local groups here, but again, we've got folks from Berrien County, from Franklin, from all around the state and different organizations on Zoom and in the room. So I'm wondering what folks have heard and what we can talk about for just a little bit and have a discussion on what some of the common, do you think, successes between some of the groups are? What do you think some of the common challenges or actions are? And if we have to, we'll use our English professor's questions to get us going. So Zoomers, you can throw that in the chat. You can also should be able to unmute yourself and speak. We can handle that, I believe, at this point in the technical part of the program. But of course, all the folks in the room can do that as well. So any observations that someone would like to make about what they've heard today or along those lines? We can see that too. Oh, you didn't remember it was gonna be interactive. Oh. Thank you. Introduce yourself.
Oh, sure. My name is Tina. I work with EDF Action. We're the advocacy partner of the Environmental Defense Fund. I actually sit at a Michigan table with Deidre and WMEAC and also with MiCAN. So thank you for having us today. We came all the way from Southeast Michigan today. This is one of our top volunteers, Kevin Fisher. He's awesome. We love him. So we're here in the west part of Michigan today. We just wanted to make the most part of it back here. But I would like to go back to that initial question that we got from our professors about environmental advocacy. How are we getting folks out? What are we doing to engage more people in a wider, broader sense? Now that we're in a pseudo post-pandemic world. I mean, even though it's still very much alive and well, more people are willing to come out, more so than in the last few years. So I'd love to hear what everyone's doing to get people out and get people engaged.
Good question. Well, how do we do today?
Well, you know what? Actually, we should hear from Kevin. And do all of these things with us.
Yeah, so my name is Kevin Fisher. I'm from his part of it. Really, I think especially as you know, as you mentioned, we're in this kind of slow post-pandemic kind of paradigm. The urge for people to connect with each other face to face is expressed for a while is very evident. So it's an untapped opportunity. It's not being taken advantage of. I love the setup you guys have here. I think this is great. I mean, I've seen several in life mixed with Zoom meetings. I think it's one of the best ones I've seen, truly, despite any kind of audio issues from getting it. It's a big room. We all feel like we're together and fellowship with each other, but yet people on Zoom kind of still see and hear all the content we're putting out. But to your point in terms of what gets people out, I think the community facing events that have any kind of secondary aspect to them, in addition to the activism and the education aspect to, I mean, that's always an opportunity to really kind of reach people at the beginning stage in their like activist fun, where they're not quite there, but they could be with a couple small nudges and things like that. I mean, like we have an event combined with a kayak event, or or an event combined with a mountain bike event, something that, or an event combined with like a community cleanup. I know we're going to do a nature walk after this. I think that's a great combination where people who may be intrigued by the climate movement, who care about it, but are a little intimidated by it. And I've noticed when I began kind of being involved with environmental groups, I mean, I care about the issue, want to be involved, but like everyone else, I was also searching for community to a degree. And so to recognize that potential within all of our volunteers and future activists, I think that's the best opportunity to really kind of boost attendance at these events to get more in person and try and care for the future.
And we like to call that the climate curious. We like to engage the climate curious and then give them an activity to do. In addition to that, and a lot of times we do like to engage folks with something that is climate related. So like when we did the kayak event in Belle Isle last summer, Kevin took out a whole group of kayakers out onto the canals in Belle Isle in Detroit, and they ended up turning it into a cleanup event. So they found a paint bucket that was just floating along in this canal, and then they started picking up garbage. And this young man who was there as a friend of a friend, who couldn't have been 15, 16 years old, came off of that kayak, running up to me as the organizer and said, that was the coolest thing I've ever done in my life. And I don't even think he's 15 or 16 years old. Impactful. He was like, I need to do this more. And I feel like we created some inspiration in that young mind. And I think that is a real sweet spot right there too. With the young people and folks who are climate curious and giving them a sense of community, because that does help with what we like to call the climate anxiety that can often come with all these issues that come at us at all times. But I would love to hear from more folks about how they're engaging people and what is working for them.
Thank you, Road Defense Fund, for being here and supporting us. We'll be over on your side of the town. And you guys will go to Grand Rapids. You're gonna get those folks this weekend
Took a
too.
picture with the university as well.
There you go. What are folks' responses, reactions to what Tina is saying and Kevin is saying about getting folks engaged, right? I mean, here we are, right? And our list is huge, and there's about, I don't know, 30 of us in the room today, about 40 of us on Zoom. So what does it take, right? And thank you, right? Even despite some technical difficulties, we do our best. So I think having hybrid events has been one thing post-pandemic that we've learned. And you're right, having an action after, again, thanks to Nature Center, gonna take those that are in person to have a little walk afterwards and do things like that together. But I'm curious other folks and Zoomers too, get in there. That was yeah.
Oh, can you hear me? I'm Dixie.
We hear you.
Okay, I wanted to share in April, Al Gore is having another training coming up, and it'll all be on the internet. And I've done it before, and I feel like that's one of the best ways to go, because they totally show you the whole picture of the training. And then you can pick and choose organizations that you can belong to. So that's one way to promote your present organization. And it's a way to join other ones. And so as a result of that, I joined an organization over in Detroit that has to do with all to do with electric cars. But of course, I belong to several organizations in addition to that. But that was one of the organizations that I was introduced to in the Gore training. But I do highly suggest it if you have the time to make that happen.
So you put in the chat what group you're from, so we can make sure we follow up. I don't know if she introduced herself earlier. Post-pandemic, how are we feeling getting together? What about Dr. Webb's other question? Maybe I'll put Brendan, who I'll run the camera for you for a minute. There's not a lot of young people in this room either, right? What about getting those youth engaged and how we might do that given their struggles? Deb, Frank, take it away.
Deb Bryden, and I'm one of the co-leaders of Citizens Climate Lobby here in Kalamazoo. And I'd like to just take a minute to brag a little bit on my co-leader over here in the corner, Mary Ann. She's been going to Western Michigan University's Homer Stryker College of Medicine and working with the students that are in their studies to become doctors. And she's been educating them about climate justice. And I just think it's been so impactful that one of the young men that she had working with her actually signed up to work with Citizens Climate Lobby. And he's just very interested in lobbying legislators to move the needle here. And I think that one of the most impactful things that professors can do is to plant the seed by helping their students understand climate justice and acknowledge how those of us that do look like me have a lot of work to do to understand the real depth of the problem. And so I've been spending the last couple of years on taking in more information and having the conversations with people and trying to build those relationships in the communities of people that don't look like me so that I can get there. And I think that as we build those relationships, we can network with each other and plant the seeds with students for things that they can do. I know Denise worked with students with En-ROADS, and we had several college students join Citizens Climate Lobby after that, and just talk about how impactful it was for them to understand the solutions of En-ROADS. And since that, I think it was since you worked with the students on that, En-ROADS now has areas where you can click on drop downs to look at environmental justice sort of impacts for each of the different solutions. So as people talk about solutions for climate change, we can help them understand what will be the most impactful and where those compromises lie. Because some of the most impactful solutions have harms to the communities that we're looking at. And so to have those conversations and help us find workable solutions, we know there will be compromises, but we want them to be justice compromises. So anyway, I just think En-ROADS is a really powerful tool too. And if any of you aren't familiar with it, it's a free tool online. If you just Google Climate Interactive En-ROADS, you can explore the tool. It's totally free, and they have student assignments. And this student that Marianne worked with recently at the College of Medicine said that he's really interested in helping promote that element within all of the different areas of medicine to spread the understanding of climate change in all of the learnings. And I think we can do that, and we'll just be more impactful. Thanks.
Thank you, Deb. And actually, the En-ROADS piece is really, it will seem daunting if you go home and Google that, because there are more resources than you could ever think of to teach you how to do it. So you can go to trainings, you can be a facilitator, you can learn how to do different versions of it, and then you gotta test it out. And what we've done before is hosted groups so that you can test it out with people who are friendly, who also know the solutions, or know how the simulation kind of works, so that you can get really good at facilitating it. Jeff Bolstrom, Director of Sustainability, wants to say a little bit more on this engagement and keep the question when he sees every day.
Yeah, I think that's a comment. It's a further challenge, but an opportunity. How do you communicate with different generations, given different communication platforms and given different communication platform bubbles, which are different from social bubbles? And how do you break out of those bubbles and cross those communications? So I'm excited to see what MiCAN's doing with folks. I know you're going to deliberately work on communication efficiency.
Yeah.
I would challenge other people to do the same. The county, especially with the new coordinator, like how do you put out a message on more than just the traditional county news channels? And trust, how do you trust that if you, hey, we got it in the newspaper, Hey, everyone, like, my kids don't read the newspaper. And they, here's an example. I have a teenage boy that is on TikTok, and I asked him when the current administration made a decision on the Willow issue, what were your friends saying? He said, oh, they're blowing up TikTok. I'm like, what are they gonna do about it? I don't know, they're just talking, right? It might be hot on social media, but no action follows. So how do we know this? And then how we deliberately communicate out in a way that crosses over. And did you want to respond?
I want to make sure that, so that's why you hire folks who are way younger than I am. So when you're on the team, I just say that, I learn stuff from these folks every single day about how to do that. And I do want to make sure that our county government gets a plug here, because this engagement work is really hard, because most of you and most of us were volunteers, right? And so you extend your friends network, and then what's the network beyond that, right? And so I think having more of us getting paid to do, here's my line. We have a lot of money out there for hard infrastructure, right? There is movement infrastructure that we are building right now, and that it takes just as much, if not more time, than building actual physical infrastructure, and you got to keep it up. The maintenance on our relationship, maintenance is a weird word to use, but you get what I'm saying, and we really need to be able to fund people to continue to do this kind of work, and that is your segue. Kalamazoo County government right behind you, Brendan. You're going to talk about this amazing position that is a long time in the works.
Yes, it was, and I appreciate the community's patience on that. As you mentioned, my name is Rachel Grover. I'm the planning director with Kalamazoo County. And thank you for saying that about infrastructure, because planning sometimes isn't thought of that, but it is such an important part of the physical infrastructure piece that people, I think, forget about and doesn't get funded. So we at Kalamazoo County have really had a gap for many years. We had a recycling person 20 years ago, and then the funding was cut. So it's very important. We're a very lean staff. We don't have a lot of capacity. So it took me a while, and our administration now is up to their full capacity, which kind of is the reason it took a while to get this position through and approved. But it's had support by really a lot of people, and we're starting to see, in the government specifically, in elected officials and the municipalities in the county, which I think is really important. I think they're starting to see the need for this as well. So I think that it's going to be great to have a person there. Since I am a staff, I have one person in my department. So I'm so excited to have, there's so much that we've been behind for several years at this level, and our municipalities are really looking to us to help shepherd and figure out what to do, what's there, what the data is showing, and what they might be able to do looking forward for their planning needs. Really, it's becoming, we're getting a lot of questions around it. So I'm so excited about this. The position is posted on the county website, and we're sharing it. Please share it so we can get great candidates. I know the city is working through theirs, and they told me they had a great candidate pool. So I'm very excited about it. So yeah, I'm just happy to be learning and listening to all of the work you guys have been doing and catching up.
That's great, thank you. And we should mention that is a 3-year funded position from a generous grant from Eagle. And I do believe that this can be a statewide model to be able to do this kind of work. Dr. Shannon, yeah.
So something I think that we always want to start with the big thing, but sometimes it takes the building of the small thing first, so you create the platform and the network, right? And so one of the things that we've seen happen here in town is that with some very small grant funds, Joan Hawkshurst over there was able to start developing some projects through a coalition of the local faith communities that were focusing on community gardens, which isn't really a big plan of thing, right? But out of that, we now have connections across the community with people who get together from middle-class churches and more lower-class churches and with more diversity. And now Allen Chapel AME has just received a grant to become one of these first congregations that's going to have funding to really do serious energy efficiency work. And they're on the north side. And now they already have these connections through this community gardening work that has been coordinated for a couple of years. So that means this project can become a hub for information and spreading it to a much wider pool of the community. So that's where I think starting with the kayaking or something, you know, you're building the connections and then that ripples outward when the opportunity arises, the social networks are there. And I think it's a great example of how even a small grant funding to get a part-time coordinator who can help build those connections actually can make such a difference. So I don't know if the Kalamazoo County project will be able to put maybe seed funds into little regional neighborhood coordinating projects, but it might be one way that the ripples expand outward.
Well, that is part of the outreach for that, for this grant funding. It's collaborating with the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition, and there will be 4 outreach projects. I have been talking to the township. I go to a lot of the township meetings as well, and talking this position up so that I'm making sure even the rural communities have input. The farming community especially, they are definitely interested. When I mentioned, you know, farming is a critical piece of this as well. So I'm just, that is a great, great example. And I will say the county has been, has grown their brownfield redevelopment work quite well. We're pretty respected in the state for it. We don't advertise the projects as well as we should. We really need to brag about it a little more, I think. But with that program, which I was in that position for 8 years, we really have had good communication with the townships and the smaller municipalities. So that's exactly right. I think having that relationship already started, that took a long time to grow that program, but that relationship is there, that I think this environmental sustainability climate coordinator will be able to, you know, feed off of that work that was already started. So I'm so happy to hear that recommendation, and important.
One thing that I was talking about when we thought about the coordinator position, there are 24 local government units within the county. Do we really expect all of them to be able to hire staff and have the capacity right now in action plan?
No, they can't.
Absolutely not, right?
Right.
Maybe one final comment by Director Spolstra, and then we're going to turn things over to a little events and wrap this up. Thank you.
Just want to spotlight the connection to the ag community, because it hasn't been mentioned much. That's awesome news. And then I would also, you know, again, bubbles, right? You're in your bubble, you're in your bubble. Like the Kalamazoo Community Foundation is opening up an environmental justice advisory board, which I think is a nice new thing, and we'll see where it goes. But a board like that with a foundation, the foundation could potentially push some money into neighborhoods, into small communities, to maintain a coordinator, communicator, just a point of contact there that you can rely on for the work that we're all doing. So there's a new idea, right? Could the foundations chip in and fund people like in their neighborhoods, in their large buildings, in urban neighborhoods, in agricultural communities? There's a new idea that maybe worth pursuing to sort of maintain a network and recognize that it takes work and time, and you should pay some people for that work and time, because it's hard and it takes some time. So thanks.
Well, thanks everyone. So there's a couple Zoomers shouting out. I know there are also some folks in here who have probably done the climate reality training, which is, you know, comparable. Like when you go through En-ROADS, climate reality is also a great place to go get yourself educated on how to talk to folks, messaging, and what all those solutions are. So we're almost at close here. So I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to shout out their events. One of the things, or go ahead, Amber.
I just wanted to shout out Ardea, if I have like a quick, like successes that they've done and what. I don't want.
I need 1 minute.
Sounds great. I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Just youth climate leaders. We have a youth climate leaders group, Pansy, and 2 really cool things they did. En-ROADS, they're presenting that in some of their science courses, and also they're doing a 5-lesson climate change lessons at Edison 5th grade elementary this year. So so youth are doing some cool peer education work, and if you want to learn more, talk to me. I'm here in the
high school students came and spoke at a panel about teaching about climate change for teachers. They were spectacular. They were so motivated for the teachers, and they were so well prepared. And the fact that they've been working on this, you know, with you guys here at the Nature Center and people from the community educating them was really inspiring. I don't want to be sure people understand around the state, the importance of having groups to support, junior high school kids as they're trying to get passionate about climate issues and help them grow into leadership, just like you guys have done.
And I think half of you in here have been involved with the student climate leadership.
Okay. I never got excited. Now we wake up. So actually, the Kalamazoo Nature Center though is one of my inspirations for doing that education statewide piece. When I first read the My Healthy Climate Plan as an educator, I was really sad to not see education in there as a strategy at all. And that's something I think that we have a lot to add to, and it's your program, Amber, here at the Nature Center that I'm on. So we do need to let our Zoomers go, and all folks in the room can keep talking and nausea as we walk and get to do other fun things together. But I do want to make one last shout out for the Michigan Climate Action Network. Your events, we would love to be amplifying them. Again, you heard our strategies of communication, this grassroots and grass top connection. Please send us your events. Colleen, our communication specialist, is compiling all of those on the web. We will help produce Facebook posts for those, social media, all of those pieces we can absolutely help with. We want to make sure that what you're doing, the actions and things that you need support with, that we are making that happen. And we do have yet one more QR code. I think next is, if you wouldn't mind, a little evaluation. Should do that one. If you could help us, this is our first event like this, so we learned a lot today. Again, I'm a lot like Missy. I don't want to make mistakes, and I want to make them in front of people and learn in real time. So here we are. We did it. We had a wonderful time together. At least I did. But we'd love to know a little bit of feedback. And please, you can always, of course, email us, call us, and let us know how the day went. We're looking for the April and a May community voices. So who's out there in the network? Maybe our new Van Buren folks, we should spotlight them. I don't know what we'll do next for our community voices series. We're open to those ideas. So please give us a little evaluation, and all of our Zoomers and everyone, thank you so much for being a part of the solution. All right, I think we close the formal. Say bye, Zoomers. Yay!
Every time you see Zoomers, I think you're
Thanks for being here.
referring to generation. I'm like, yeah, I call them Zoomers generation B, so they call them Zoomers.